Hey guys, let's get more news about Warriors, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Draymond Green explains why Paul George did not join Warriors. Draymond Green was none too happy about the Golden State Warriors failing to add Paul George. On his podcast, he explained why he was mad at the Los Angeles Clippers for not trading George to Golden State. "I'm a little salty about that because, as you all know, Paul George was gonna come to the Warriors. We wanted Paul George to come to the Warriors," he said on the Draymond Green Show. "For us to take Paul George, it would have taken a sign-and trade, and the Clippers didn't really want to play ball. Didn't really want to help him get to where he wanted to go, and so in turn they get nothing back. Once George opted out of his contract, the Warriors lost their chance to add him. The Warriors did not have the cap space to add him in free agency. Because he opted out instead, that paved the way for George to join the Philadelphia 76ers. Had the Clippers agreed, Paul George would have been their most high-profile addition since Kevin Durant. After George signed with the Sixers, ESPN's Ramona Shelburne explained how it all went wrong for the Warriors. She detailed that both the Warriors and George had mutual interest in joining forces. The franchise engaged in a spirited effort to trade for George ahead of Saturday's deadline for him to pick up or turn down his $48 million player option for next season. While the talks were ongoing, sources said George entertained the notion of joining Curry and the Warriors, so the Clippers had a chance to get some value in return for him, Shelburne wrote in a July 3 story. Shelburne then explained which player, in particular, was the deal-breaker. The Warriors offered multiple combinations of expiring contracts, young players, and an unprotected 2027 first-round pick, sources said. The Clippers countered by asking for prized youngster Jonathan Kuminga, sources said. The Warriors resisted because Kuminga is so important to their own future, sources said, but also because they worried George wouldn't be as interested in joining them if they gave up too much to get him. Shelburne revealed another factor got in the way of a possible deal. Sources said LA held firm on not taking back contracts that would land it over the second apron unless there were compelling reasons to do so. After they failed to pursue George, the Warriors have turned their eyes to another star. Bleacher Report's Chris Haynes reported that the Warriors are among the teams pursuing Utah Jazz star Lauri Markkanen. "I was told the Warriors are the aggressors. San Antonio Spurs, they're in on it as well. I'm told, on a serious nature, it's those two teams, Spurs, Warriors. But I'm told the Warriors, more importantly, are really pursuing, really trying to see what they can do to try and make it happen." Evidently, the Warriors are making one last push for another title while they still can with Green Stephen Curry. Because Markkanen has an inexpensive contract, they can acquire him without worrying about tax aprons. Dieter Kurtenbach, it's Lauri Markkanen or bust for the Warriors. If you squint and look at just the right angle, you can see a Golden State Warriors team that improved this offseason. Sure, Klay Thompson amid a surprising amount of one-sided acrimony walked out the door, and yes, the Warriors did not turn Chris Paul's expiring contract into, well, anything. But with both of those players off the team's books, the Warriors were able to sign De'Anthony Melton, a premier perimeter defender, to a full mid-level exception contract, $12.82 million, and add Kyle Slow-Mo Anderson via a sign-and-trade deal. And perhaps Buddy Hield will use up the rest of that roughly $16 million trade exception the Warriors received from the Dallas Mavericks for Thompson. In crude, but simple terms, the Warriors traded Thompson and Paul for Melton, Anderson, and Hield, pending the Warriors and Sixers finalizing a sign-and-trade first reported by Shams Charania Tuesday night. Is that a win? Sure. You can easily say the Warriors are now better on defense and just about equivalent on offense. Let's just call it a wash. The Warriors squandered the Paul exit and lost one of their great all-time players, that matters, too, in unceremonious fashion, but ultimately scrapped, clawed, and fought to pull it back to something close to even. Credit to General Manager Mike Dunleavy Jr. for that. But pulling back to even isn't good enough for the Warriors because, as you might recall, the team stunk last year. I know it's fashionable to say the Golden State was not, actually, far off in 2023 to 24. I get it, it's fun to revise history. And folks are having a ton of fun noting that they won 46 games, pretty good, despite Draymond Green's suspensions. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I submit 48 minutes of April basketball in Sacramento into evidence. I rest my case. The Warriors were the number 10 seed in the Western Conference. They didn't even sniff the real playoffs. And the West is only improving. So while they're not running it back, they haven't pushed the rock appreciably further up the hill, either. No, this simply will not do, not if the Warriors want to make something of the final years of Steph Curry's incredible tenure. So, heaven help us all, the fate of the Warriors rests in the hands of Danny Ainge. Yes, there are countless trade options for the Warriors, but one player stands out above the rest: Jazz 7-footer Lauri Markkanen. Of all the reasonable trade possibilities, only Markkanen provides bona fide secondary scoring, scheme, and temperament fit, as well as the possibility of keeping the rest of the team's roster relatively intact. In short, he's the guy for the Warriors. And Ainge, Utah's top basketball executive, is going to hold him ransom. The Knicks just traded 5 first-round picks and tossed in a first-round pick swap for Mikal Bridges, a wonderful player who has never made an NBA All-Star game. Markkanen, who has been an All-Star and averaged 23 points per game on 48% shooting, 40% from beyond the arc, 90% from the free throw line, is worth just as much, if not more. Ainge is going to get every bit of that more, and perhaps a bit more. And unless the Warriors want to jettison Jonathan Kuminga, they won't have any power to tell him no. Golden State is sitting on a roster with a star in the final years of supernova status, a whole lot of role players, and no clear number 2. There's no one to carry the offensive load on a night when Curry is off or sitting. There's no true secondary offensive threat to pull defenders, 2, 3, hell, toss in a fourth, at the 6'3" guard in late-game situations. NBA free agency, 2 West powerhouses now front-runners to trade for Lauri Markkanen. With most free agents now off the board this season and several contending teams' lineups largely unchanged, one-time All-Star Utah Jazz combo forward Lauri Markkanen has emerged as a top name being floated as a major trade target this summer. According to Bleacher Report's Chris Haynes, the Golden State Warriors and San Antonio Spurs are seen as the teams most enthusiastically honing in on the 7-foot phenom. Between those two clubs, Haynes considers the Warriors to be the more invested team in adding Markkanen. Per Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports, Utah is open to fielding calls for Markkanen's services this offseason. The Arizona product is also extension eligible, and it appears that the Jazz is amenable to keeping him rostered, even though the 27-year-old is in his prime right now and on a great contract, while Utah is going absolutely nowhere anytime soon, and faces what could be a loaded draft in 2025. Markkanen is on an absolute steal of an $18 million expiring contract, and it will probably behoove him to wait to reach unrestricted free agency rather than agree to a contract extension anyway. It may be in Team CEO of basketball operations Danny Ainge's best interest to move on from Markkanen and focus on extracting as much future draft equity as possible. Utah doesn't have much veteran depth around Markkanen anymore and has finished 68-96 across its 2 seasons with the big man rostered. Granted, the team sold at the 2022-23 trade deadline and appeared to deliberately not add major pieces at the last offseason or, thus far, the 2024 offseason. Markkanen deserves a chance to shine on a team that's hoping to go places, and it does not appear likely that team will be the Jazz at all. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of Lauri Markkanen? Leave your opinion in the comments.